Welcome to Talking WoW, the podcast where we talk about World of Warcraft, believe it or not. My name is Tom, and today we are going to be talking about bringing the Blue Dragonflight home. And to do that, we decided, why not get a member of the Blue Dragonflight themselves to come on the show? We are honored to be joined by Andrew James Russell, who voices many characters in the game world in Diablo, Lost Ark, Genshin, Resident Evil, so many more. But we're bringing Andrew in today because Andrew is the voice of Kalecgos in World of Warcraft. Welcome, Andrew.
What an extraordinary introduction. That was amazing. Thank you for having me here. This is so exciting. I guess this world is so full of wonder. There you go. That's
Brilliant.
For everybody out there.
Brilliant. I mean, how are we going to top that?
We're done. Thank you for joining us,
yes,
everybody.
Thank you very much. That's all we could afford of Andrew's time, just that one line. Also here is my co-host and unofficially the voice of the Lost Vikings in World of Warcraft, Marty. Hey, Marty.
I don't really feel like I can, follow up on that introduction and things. So let's just move the show. Yeah, we're here. Let's go.
Again, Andrew, wonderful to have you here. We're so excited. And something we do like to do here on the show is talk about World of Warcraft, obviously. But we like to get to know our guests a little bit better and specifically their journey in World of Warcraft. So how did your journey as a player in World of Warcraft begin?
Wow. Literally.
Starting off with the heavy stuff,
We're diving
think
right
back
in.
of all those memories.
My journey in World of Warcraft began as a small little child, believe it or not, I guess. I think the year was 2005 or 2006, really early days of just discovering what an MMORPG really is. I was playing a game called Guild Wars at the time, the first version of it. And it was, at the time, it was between it was like a competition, like I remember back in that day, it was like, what's the best MMORPG out there? And there was only a few of them.
Everyone had one, didn't they? Everyone had one coming out, it seemed.
Yeah, everybody did. And I mean, it was, for me, I was like, well, Guild Wars is the obvious choice because it's free, But what got me is I was at a LAN center. I don't know if those even exist anymore. It's like a place where you would go and play computer games with other nerds that didn't have good computers at home themselves.
I love how you're just explaining it as well, because, people probably don't know what that is.
Back before the internet was even a thing, like these places were everywhere. They're abundant. And I would see, you go there and you'd see people playing Counter-Strike, and you'd see people playing, some like StarCraft, and then you'd see the MMO people playing Guild Wars, or you'd see people playing like City of Heroes, or the one where you could jump, World of Warcraft. I'm like, wait a second. So what if you wanted to like jump off that thing, that cliffside in that town there and jump on, and they like jumped off the side and jumped onto the top of a building in Orgrimmar, and I was like, my mind was melted because I was like, I can't believe the physics in this game that you can jump. Like this is a game changer. So like that was my first venture into the World of Warcraft, was at a LAN center, and I found out my computer could run it, and I convinced my parents at the time to be like, hey, I need the subscription. I had to break it down on why this was important, and that was my first adventure into the game, and the rest is history. I guess 20 years of history, or almost 20 years of history. That's crazy.
And have you been playing it solidly for 20 years, or have you had some breaks in between there, or have you just been...
Of course.
Like Marty. I like to use Marty as an example, but Marty's been pretty solid for 20 years. He hasn't wavered in his commitment.
I'm definitely a wavering gamer for all the games I play. So I come and go in waves, and especially for World of Warcraft, I played, I think it was Burning Crusades was like my first like full adventure through the game. I played a little bit before that with the Classic, but I just wasn't good enough to figure it out. But Burning Crusades, I played through Wrath, and then I dipped out until Pandaria, and I came back in Pandaria, made Jack Black my panda, and gotta love that.
Had to be done,
as you do, and moved on forward, and then Took another break, came back in BFA, took another break, came back in Dragonflight for obvious reasons. But that's kind of how I am as a gamer, and that the beautiful thing about coming back to World of Warcraft is you can just, with the knowledge and understanding of how the game works, you can just jump right back into pretty much where you left off. There's something magical about jumping into a character that I made in 2006 that's just standing in Stormwind, level 10. Like, I'm like, what was I doing on this guy? Like, why did I make this guy? But it's just so cool to see, like, I remember that armor. I remember this character. Why did I name him that? What phase was I going through at that point in my life? I don't know. So it's really a magical thing to come back to time and time again and just kind of pick up where you left off.
I love how you talk about as well, like, you just saw somebody playing the game and they did something simple, like just jumping. And I think, like, that time when World of Warcraft came out, yes, there was a lot of competition from other games, but also it feels like there wasn't as many games as there are now. And it felt actually like, I think a lot of people just saw somebody else playing World of Warcraft and they were just like, I've never seen anything like this before. This is incredible. And I think I've just heard, like, so many people just seeing World of Warcraft at that stage in their life and just being like, I gotta get on this. I think Marty is a similar story of, like, his friend was playing it and he saw him play it, and it's just like, I gotta get in on this, I gotta get in on pressing my space bar. My character's moving.
Yeah. I want to jump.
At that time, I remember, there was a game called Counter-Strike Condition Zero. And this game was like in between Counter-Strike 1.6 and Counter-Strike Source. And this game you could put bots in. And I remember, like, figuring out every creative way possible to go over to my friend's house and get these awful computers that could barely even, like, turn on to run this game and connect them via LAN so that we could just join the same server as each other and run around and fight bots and play as if we're like it's just a natural thing. If you think about how crazy technology has become, like, Halo 1 was not online. Like, thinking about that, Halo 1, we used to take our Xboxes and connect them and bring these, big old honking, I used to call them the monster, these TVs that, like, took 3 people to carry down the stairs for a 20-inch freaking 70-pound, thing. And
they're the reason why we were going to have bad backs, when we're older.
But you'd have those LAN parties. So the fight and the desire to play with your friends in these beautiful worlds that we all get lost in on our own was so present. And to see this game that not only did that well, but it also just did it on a grand global scale. All of a sudden I was playing with people in Ireland. I was playing with people that I never could have possibly ever met before in my life. And the fact that we're, like, running dead mines together and they're screwing it up because they don't know what the heck their role is. Like, and I can argue with them and it's great. I'm like, hey, you're messing it up. And they're like, oh, I'm messing it up. And I'm like, okay, now we'll do better next time. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah, magical times. And I think that's, carried on as well, like that sense of community and connectivity just throughout the years as well. It's just got better, like, it's got easier. It's, you don't have to lug that TV around anymore, thank goodness, but it all stemmed from there, and I think it's just evolved, and you still just look back on that with such a warm feeling as well.
I remember just filling up my granddad's car just with computers and 4 people and monitors and sitting on top of each other because, the gear took up so much space, and he had, like, a small Toyota and crazy thing. And then we just drove to one of our friend's house and set up all the computers and just having a full weekend of a LAN party. That was crazy times, but it was so when you think back at how easy it is today, it seems crazy, but it was so much fun.
There's a little bit of that's I think WoW Classic kind of pulls out the nostalgic card on a lot of people, and I think that nostalgic card is very, very present in the idea of these. We kind of almost wish that we could kind of go back to those days a little bit sometimes. And I feel bad for current generation sometimes of kids who just don't, like, I feel bad and I don't, because it's remarkable how it is now. But I also, there's something about, you know, those days of having, like, I have pictures of me and my 3 friends in, you know, in their basement with, you know, all of our computers. We spent like 6 hours getting it all worked up so it's all like perfect, so we could go and we could be next to each other running raids or playing first person shooters or whatever it was that we were doing. And like, we thought we were the most clever people in the universe because we're like, we got an unfair advantage because we're sitting next to each other, you know, like we could see, oh, you just lost to that guy? I'll go find him. You know, like we had it. We thought we were like so cool. And there's some sense of a community and really close friendships that were formed because of those days that those guys that I played with back when I was 12, 13 years old, I mean, 20 years later, I still play games. I still play World of Warcraft with them. It's still a thing. It's just now it's all virtual. So, you know, it's just different the way things are now. It's not necessarily worse or better, but I just wish that there was more of a reason for people to get together and play games together like they used to. I miss it a little bit. Nostalgia.
It comes to us all. So moving ahead in time, just a little bit, we've got the World of Warcraft, and then we've got you as a gamer and now a voice actor. How did that happen? How did you get into the world of voice acting? And I realize that could be a very open-ended question.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to keep it brief. I mean, I think we kind of touched a little bit on it. I mean, I obviously am a huge gamer. And it started from an early age. I remember very early on waking up to my parents being like, hey, we just got this new video game. It's really cool. It's called Star Fox. And I was like, well, that's Star Fox. Like, really young. I don't even know. I was probably like 5 or 6 years old. And, you know, up until that point, I did all the stuff that you probably should do more of, like stay outside and ride bikes. And, you know, I was out till the sun went down, you know, and I still did that for years on. But right around middle school, I started really getting into games because of games like Counter-Strike, World of Warcraft, Guild Wars, all these games. And I found a really sense of community. And once I was playing a game, and I can't recall if it was probably around 8th grade. I don't know the specific time frame, but I was playing. And it just like kind of dawned on me that the people talking in the game weren't just characters in the game. They were people. They were humans. And these sounds and these creatures were all coming from people. And I mean, I already knew that from animation, but like it never just dawned on me with video games. I didn't even think about it. I just kind of was like, oh. And, you know, as I was playing through all these games, like, you know, playing Half-Life or, you know, Blue Shift or whatever it is that I was playing at the time, it blew my mind thinking like somebody's making a living doing this. Like, that's crazy. So I started to learn a little bit about voice acting then, about 7th or 8th grade. And when I got into high school, I was a little bit lost. I was a little bit kind of like a kid that didn't really know where he belonged. I felt like, I wasn't a very academic child, and I wasn't a very, I wasn't into sports. I wasn't into chess. I wasn't into any of these things. I like playing video games and I like doing that stuff. And I walked in my first day of high school, and this was just a freshman day. It was the first day for just a freshman, so they're not overwhelmed. And all the teachers were out in the hallway greeting everybody. And for whatever reason, I walked in and I just immediately went to the right inside the front doors of my high school. And the theater teacher of the school was like, you know, actively recruiting people to come into class because there wasn't enough theater students. And he's like, hey, you should come, you know, be in theater. Like, it'll help, you know, it'll help with whatever it is that you feel like you need to, like, get out of you know. And I just thought that was interesting. So that kind of sparked a theater bug in me. And lo and behold, I went heavy into that. Marching band, theater, video games. That was like my life in high school. And I decided theater was the way to go. So I tried to get into theater. I tried to do, after high school, I tried to get into a theater college, and it didn't work out at first. And I was like, Well, I'm going to be realistic. I'm going to go get a coding degree. I'm going to learn C++. That's good. And but I'm still going to have some fun. So I'm going to get a game design degree as well. I'm going to do them side by side. So for almost 3 years, I did that. And I found myself just not fitting in that crowd either, like fitting in the programming side of things. Game design was still super fun to me, but I just felt like I needed to do more. Like the theater was calling me. So I ended up going to school for musical theater. I found another school and I auditioned for it and I got in, and I did musical theater throughout college. And throughout college, I still had that voiceover thing ticking in my brain. My second year of college, I bought a microphone and I was like, oh man, it'd be so cool to be in video games animation someday. Where do I start? I started doing like my own commercials for like products that I had in my refrigerator. You know, like I think I have this awful recording of me reading the little catchphrase for Foster Farms corn dogs. It's like Foster Farms corn dogs, you know, like I thought I was being so cool. I was like, yeah, this is great. I like put some like royalty free music to it. I was like, yeah, this is going to be.
That is today's sponsor today, by the
way. Foster Farms corn dogs. Yeah. But like, I remember like, I just loved it, but it never was like an accessible thing. It just always felt like, I don't know what this is, but I know that I love it. I know that this is something that I'd want to do someday. And all the while still studying musical theater. I graduated college, did a lot regionally for about 2 years. I did theater, and then I moved to Los Angeles, and this was finally the time for me I was going to get into TV film. That was like my goal. So I moved to Los Angeles. I was like, TV film all the way. I'm done doing theater. I've done the professional circuit. I'm not going to leave Los Angeles. And then I booked a Broadway tour of Jersey Boys, and then I left Los Angeles completely, and my plans went completely out of the door. So I toured that for a year and a half, and then I came back, and I found out I was living in the hub of voiceover for the entire world. This was back in 2015, and I was like, I've been wanting to get into voiceover forever. Like, this is like a sign. Like, I have to figure this out now. So I kind of dove head in, like I just went for it. I learned everything I could learn about voiceover, anything that I could do with a specific goal in mind to be in video games. And I mean, 8 years later, here I am, and it's been quite the journey. And if it weren't for my sense of being an outcast or being lost or feeling like I didn't fit in any group, if I didn't have that experience and I didn't have that turning point of feeling like, oh, theater, I have I have video games, I have a community that I found, I don't think any of this would have ever happened. And it took all those weird rejections and weird moments of my life to lead me to this point of realization of like, oh my gosh, here I am. You know what I mean? I feel like all of those paths led me to this point. So that's the long journey in a, believe it or not, cliff noted version of how I got here. It's kind of crazy.
I was about to say, is that the short version? Then
that's the short version.
The long one seems very interesting.
I mean, you know.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because I think, you know, it can be quite relatable. People like not finding their place in the world, and, you know, sometimes it takes a long way to get there, and I think that's just a reminder of that. And just another point that you mentioned as well about just when you were younger and just thinking about the character voices in game. And I think as gamers, it's something we just totally forget about, and we're quite ignorant to, that there's so many moving parts to actually what takes to make a video game. And, you know, you've got the music, and you've got the development side, and then you've got, you know, the voice acting as well. And that takes a lot to bring that all together to make the complete package of the game. So it's just like a reminder that, like you say, there's humans behind this as well.
Yeah. I think there's something to that. I think so oftentimes we forget that, you know, regardless of what is happening in the world of video games, and regardless of what's happening with the voices in the games, you know, people tend to forget the humanity behind I mean, everybody has a story of something that has happened to them, and that character, you never know. I mean, with Kalecgos, just because we're talking about Kalecgos, like all of that history that I have, I piled into that character. You know what I mean? Like that, if it weren't for my experiences back in 2005, I wouldn't be able to do anything that I do in World of Warcraft the way that I do it. And then, there might be somebody in another game or in World of Warcraft or whatever that has never even heard of the game. You know what I mean? So it's like, but like that doesn't discount the experiences that they can bring to the role. So it's just kind of a crazy thing when you just think of like, oh my gosh, there's so much that can be behind what's happening behind the character. And it's cool. It's kind of a fun thing.
Yeah. And I mean, like your story and almost the Blue Dragonflight is somewhat similar in a way of like that. They're trying to find their place. They're reestablishing these connections and, finding that place where they ultimately belong and they can thrive. And it's just kind of interesting how that works. And then you're able to, channel that in as well. So just on the subject of Kalecgos and your journey through gaming and voice acting, how did it feel to become the voice of Kalecgos? Like in a game that you had been associated with, like playing for such a long time?
It was like, and forgive me, but it was like finding my family. It was like, it really was. It felt, I mean, just going in the first session, I couldn't even believe. In fact, when I auditioned for the character, I didn't even, I thought it was kind of in reference to the character, not actually the character. I thought I was auditioning for somebody else that just kind of was like, that idea. And once I got in there and they were like, hey, this is Kalecgos, I like lost my brain because, I was raiding back in the day, I remember all those days of Kalecgos, and, I knew kind of what that meant, and it was just a beautiful thing. And it was also kind of fun for me because when you record sessions, typically they approach the session, by they I mean like the developers or the direction team or whoever's on the call, the producers, whoever it is, they approach the session assuming you know nothing, because a lot of times we don't. I mean, there's a lot of projects that I don't know anything about because there's a number of reasons. You don't have time to research every single thing about every single project we do, because that's just, we're bouncing around every day doing different stuff. But this one in particular, they started to explain, okay, this is kind of like, they're explaining the world in their own way, kind of comparing it, like it's kind of like this and it's kind of like that, you think of it like this. And I'm like, guys, I have something to admit to you. I was like, I have, I don't know, 15 max level characters and over thousands of hours in this game. And they're like, oh, you could like feel the relief on their shoulders. Like they're just like, oh my gosh, that we could talk to you like a normal person. Like we can say references to like Illidan and you'll know what that means. Like it was such a relief for them and for me as well.
I could just imagine them trying to explain what a Murloc was or something.
Can you imagine? Like I can't imagine trying to explain any of that stuff. Like, to anybody who has never stepped foot in the world of Warcraft, trying to even explain what a orc is, you know what I mean? It's like, it's hard. It's hard to paint that picture, but just having that familiarity with the game and the mutual understanding of the journey that has gotten us to this point, that it was a remarkable thing. And it was an experience I'll never forget. And I'm so thankful for them for bringing me in. And like every session ever since has been it's been wild and so much fun to work with these amazingly talented individuals. It's really cool.
So you mentioned it briefly about your collaboration with the game developers, and you also mentioned it about like how you've brought experiences into your voice acting as well. I'd be interested to know, like, how much influence do you have like on the character when you're recording your lines or, inputting into like the creative side of that?
Sure. I would say it's I don't want to say 50-50, but I would say I think a lot of, with all of us, it's what you bring to the role that kind of inspires more creativity. So when I come in, what I'm giving in my take, if this is a really emotional scene and I'm talking to somebody, in fact, there was a moment when Kalecgos was talking to Sindragosa, and what my question for the creative team at the time was what does this feel like? Does this feel like, because keep in mind, we have a script with words, no picture. This is before everything. We don't have any idea what this is. We have words. It's like you're just looking like a blank page almost. So I asked them the question. I said, what does this feel like? Does this feel like you're seeing your love for the first time in 50 years? Or is this you're seeing somebody that you've only heard of in stories that you cannot believe they even exist? Does this feel like you've been betrayed by somebody? Like, what does this feel like? And the wonderful thing about all of the producers and the team that are working on the narrative and the cinematics and all the things that Kalecgos is involved with is they always have the most thoughtful and beautiful answers. And they know, asking them challenging questions, they know how to deliver because they know the game better than anybody. And they answer it so well that it paints a picture for me as the actor side of me that I can bring experience to that line. So then the line goes from being this generic, I can't believe you're here, to like something that's just so much more profound. Like you've like through talking and back and forth and figuring it out, I can imagine a scenario where it's like, I've only heard stories of you. Like I can't believe you're here. It's so much different, and it transforms the way that you would read the line. And through this collaborative effort, you get to the final result. And I would say it's about like 70-30 more so. It's like I think I like to bring a lot to the table, but I also wouldn't be able to get there without the help of amazingly talented individuals on the other side. So it's very much a collaborative effort. It's awesome. It's my favorite thing to do.
We definitely appreciate getting a little peek behind the curtain there as well. And I think that leads into this next part really, really well, because the Blue Dragonflight Questline in 10.1, I think it has been one of the highlights in storytelling in the Dragonflight expansion so far. You've already talked a little bit about what it was like being involved in that. And you talked about, you're just initially just dealing with words on a page. What was it like seeing that finished product? Because I know like the fan base, it was an emotional ride for the players, and it was so well received. And just traveling back to the old world and just the whole narrative as a whole, what was it like seeing that come to life?
Unreal. I mean, listen, when I first got wind of what we were doing on that questline in particular, my first instinct was to open up a book by Christy Golden. Christy Golden actually sent over a few of these books after our first recording, and she was like, check these out. It was a book that she wrote called Thrall, I believe, is the World of Warcraft book. It's the Thrall book. It's all about Thrall, which is funny because it's like, well, it's all about Thrall. What is this? But there's a lot of history and things that happen with Kalecgos in this world. In particular, we learn about Kalecgos' history, and in particular, there's a storyline on the side, which is kind of cool that they put tribute to it with Kirigosa, I believe is her name, which wasn't really it was more of a book character that they kind of brought into the game. But the most important thing to me was returning to Theramore. That whole quest line and what Theramore means to Kalecgos. I had to research, all of the history of Theramore and like the importance of what this place means and why it's so important. And not just that, but throughout the whole quest line, just all these places that you got to return to and see and feel the history. That meant so much to me to return to. So I wanted to make sure in the performance that not only does he speak about his experiences, that he actually remembers and feels those experiences and remembers the history behind each place. And as you go there, there's a lot of finding himself, and a lot of this family is everything. He's full on like Fast and Furious mode. Vin Diesel over here. We're going full on family, and all of these memories and all of these things are kind of just being poured out of him. And gosh, it was just so. They gave me so much wonderful things to work with, and I think a lot of that work was done by Anne Stickney, who is one of the narrative leads. And oh my gosh, Anne is like one of the best people to work with, and in that Anne knows the game in and out. And I mean, it was just incredible. That's the best way I can explain it. It was so much fun to work on, and not only that, not only Anne, I would be remiss to not mention all of the community of World of Warcraft, because the amount of videos that I watched on lore, all on YouTube, of people talking about all of the history of not just Theramore, but also just the history of Kalecgos, the history of World of Warcraft, there's so many wonderful videos throughout the entire community where these passionate, really well-spoken individuals talk about the meaning of just one specific random thing. Like, it's remarkable that I can find a video about the impact of the Theramore bombing of the man. You know what I mean? Like, what? That's crazy that I could find that, but it's out there because the community in World of Warcraft is so passionate, and it would be silly of me not to take the same passion and energy that they portray and put it into the character. If I didn't do that, I'd be doing a disservice to them. So that's why this whole quest line was so important to me.
Absolutely nailed it. I mean, yourself and just everyone who was part of bringing that quest to the community, to us gamers. I think it was just so, I don't know if there was just like aspects of it that were just so relatable as well, and just you could just you were hanging off every word, and just it was just enriched in this emotion that, there's been criticism, of like Warcraft narrative in the past, like Shadowlands and things like that, but Dragonflight seems to turn this page, and what we got there, I know you really enjoyed it as well, Marty. It'd be kind of awkward if you didn't, but it was just it was just so refreshing, and I think when it was done, we were just sort of sitting there in awe of just like what transpired.
Well, thank you. I'm really glad that it unfolded that way for you guys, because I think that everybody, and this doesn't just go for obviously for this quest line, but working with the entire team over at Blizzard and seeing the amount of passion and care that they all put into all this stuff, and seeing the end result be received so well. And I mean, listen, my favorite part playing through was the freaking Katamari ball in the beginning, where you freaking I lost my mind at that. I thought it was so funny, and I mean, I was just so happy that was even a thing. I was like, this is so brilliant, like, it's so great. And lo and behold, the guy who programmed it happened to be watching my stream while I was playing it, and he sent me a message and said, I worked so hard on this. Like, thank you so much for, saying how much you enjoyed it. I'm so happy. Like, thinking about just a little moment, you know what I mean? Just a little Katamari moment, and just being like, this is great. This is so funny. Somebody worked really hard on that. Somebody poured hours of their life into making something so simple that was just like a small little reference. I mean, think about the overarching, story. I mean, these are hundreds of very talented, thoughtful, and creative individuals who just are pouring their soul into this. And to see such a lovely and warm response to all that work that they put into it, I think is a very, very lovely thing to see. And I think anytime anybody has anything that they love about something, please post about it, please share it, because they see it, and we live in a world where people are more vocal about things they dislike rather than things that they do like. So, when that's all you see, if you see stuff that's like, oh man, I didn't like this, I mean, speak up and say the things that you do like, like what's something you did like about it. And those nice comments, you never know, might keep that person who made that thing going to make the next thing even better. It's just going to create more positivity,
Absolutely. And it just goes back to the point as well. Like, the people behind the game, there's humans there, real emotions, real feelings. And it is just important to remember that.
Yeah.
Serious question now.
Go for it.
Are you responsible for the Kalecgos soup slurping?
Oh, gosh. Oh man, I the actual physical sound effect, I don't know if that's me or not, to be honest with you. I don't think I was in there going. I might have made some like, or some weird efforts and stuff like that. I don't know if I slurped or anything, but that whole soup sequence was so funny. It was like, thanks. Like, I don't know if I want to try this, but yes, that's one of my favorite. I mean, listen, he doesn't even touch the spoon to his mouth. It completely misses. It's which makes it even better. He's like, yeah, this is really good. Like pouring it off on the side.
Yeah.
I love it. That's my favorite animation that they put into the game. I sat there staring at Kalecgos eating quote unquote soup for some time, probably too long for a 34-year-old man to be sitting there watching. But here we are.
Kalecgos is just so relatable with everything, but I think that specific moment I was like, yep, just being handed this bowl of kind of fish soup, I'd been exactly the same.
Yeah, me too.
Be looking for a nearby plant just to pour it into or something.
That was so good.
Great.
I already drank it. They're
Tasty.
like, we've got more. It's like, oh.
So you are the voice of Kalecgos, but we decided to throw this question in here as well. If you could pick any other character to voice in the world of Warcraft, who would you pick?
Oh.
And consider this your audition.
Oh, gosh. Well, I already got to voice a Tauren. That was always like a dream.
Yes.
So that's really cool. If you don't know, I'm the voice of a guy named Andante Dormu. Dante for short. He's a bronze dragon. And you could find him over by the Bronze Flight Questline. But I've always wanted to voice a goblin because I got this got the thing going. I could do this. I could do the thing. And I always like the idea that they were just like these get out of here. These little like Joe Pesci sort of guys, But if I could do any other main character, I think probably I really like Rathian because he's so sassy. He's just a sassy guy. I think Rathian would be cool, but I really find Kalecgos to just be the perfect fit for me. I think you summed it up best in that that sense of finding, not feeling like you belong and finding your family. Like, I never even thought about it until you mentioned that kind of is the perfect fit for my story. Is like I finally kind of found my family. I found the thing that I feel like I was meant to do with my life, and because of that, I can't really imagine getting to voice any other character in the World of Warcraft than Kalecgos. I think it's a perfect fit.
What a beautiful statement. And Marty, what do we think about the Goblin? Is that a pass?
Yeah, I think so. I think that should be just a small side role you can quickly do. But I think we want to keep you as Kalecgos.
Okay, great.
And finally, you obviously can't share too much about the future. You know, you're not a bronze dragon after all, Kalecgos. But what has been your favorite part of Dragonflight so far? Excluding the obviously amazing 10.1 quest line.
Of course. Excluding that quest line, I certainly found the Azure Span, that whole introduction into what was going on with Kalecgos. His arc throughout Dragonflight has been one of the most rewarding arcs to be a part of as a voice actor in general in all the games that I've ever voiced, because he goes from being this broken, unsure, quiet, somewhat sad and lost individual to being a confident, strong leader who knows where his place is. Like, the difference and the journey to get there pretty much all happens throughout the Azure Span. And I mean, not just because of Kalecgos, but I mean, the Azure Span's like, I mean, we can all agree, this was like the best zone in Dragonflight. I think it's so beautiful. I mean, I love the thematic nature of it. It reminded me of Wrath a little bit, which was really cool to go flying through that, flying the dragons.
You've got the Tuskar in there, so it's, it's automatically the best, right?
Yeah, the Tuskar, those. You know what's funny? Fun fact about the Tuskar, when we first were recording the Tuskar, we were just chatting about life and stuff, and in the booth we were talking about just what's going on in life, and I was talking about my wife, and I was like, yeah, and this is right before we even start talking, and keep in mind I only see my line, so I didn't know this was a thing, but I'm like, yeah, my wife, yeah, she's a voice actor too, and we're just we went to the Santa Monica Pier or whatever today. It was a lot of fun. They're like, oh, what's your wife's name? I'm like, Brenna, and they're like, they lost their minds. I was like, why is that so funny? Like, her name's Brenna. Like, they're like, you're about to quest for the next 2 sessions with a Tuskar named Brenna. That you're,
oh my
and
goodness.
Brenna's the first Tuskar that you meet, that you go on all the adventures with the Tuskar, and they just thought it was so funny that Kalecgos and Brenna are questing together and doing all these adventures together and finding their way together, while the actor for Kalecgos and his wife Brenna are adventuring through life together. It was just a funny moment. So all of that memory of the Azure Span and all those quest lines, the finding himself and all that stuff, it's just, that will forever be one of my favorite experiences, especially for World of Warcraft.
Unfortunately, this episode has to come to an end, even though I don't want it to. But Andrew, thank you so much for sharing your story and so many beautiful coincidences in your journey, not only in voice acting, but World of Warcraft and how they came together. We are so grateful for you sharing this story. It's been an absolute joy to listen to you speak. And I don't know, how do you say, what's a good goodbye for a blue dragon?
See you soon, my friends. Something like that.
We'll have show notes with links where you can find Andrew, and of course you can find Andrew in game Kalecgos. So if you haven't done that Blue Dragonflight Questline, what are you doing? Stop listening to this and go do it. I've been Tom, that's been Marty, that's been Andrew, the voice of Kalecgos, and we've been talking WoW.
Thanks for tuning in, champion! Did you enjoy this episode of Talking WoW? If so, why not drop a review on your podcast catcher of choice, or leave us a comment? You can find Talking WoW on Twitter or YouTube over at Talking WoW. Hope to see you again soon!